Hare Krishna, we're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 6, entitled Creation of the Universal Form, Text 38. It's March 16th, 2024, Srimad Bhagavatam 3.6.38. Narayanamam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, to Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nicham Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yutamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Text 38, Chapter 6, Canto 3 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Atmana Avasita Vatsa Mahima Kavina Adina Samvatsara Sahasra Ante Diya Yoga Vipakaya Atmano Vasito Vatsa Mahima Kavina Dina Samvatsara Sahasrante Diya Yoga Vipakaya Atmano Vasito Vatsa Mahima Kavina Dina Samvatsara Sahasrante Diya Yoga Vipakaya Atmano Vasito Vatsa Mahima Kavina Dina Samvatsara Sahasrante Diya Yoga Vipakaya
Atmano Vasito
Vatsa
Mahima Kavina Dina
Mahima Kavina Dina
Samvatsara Sahasrante
Samvatsara Sahasrante Diya Yoga Vipakaya. Someone online like to chant the verse. If not, we'll go to the word meanings. Atmana, of the Supreme Soul. Avasita, known. Vatsa, O my dear son. Mahima, glories. Kavina, by the poet Brahma. Adina, original. Samvatsara, celestial years. Sahasra Ante, at the end of 1,000. Diya, by intelligence. Yoga Vipakaya, by matured meditation. Translation. O my son, the original poet, Brahma, after mature meditation for 1,000 celestial years, could know only that the glories of the Supreme Soul are inconceivable. So this is Maitreya speaking to Vidura, and he's referring to Vidura as my son. Like Vidura is younger, so he's referring to him as, oh my son. The original poet, so Brahma, the first spiritual master in our Sampradaya, is the original poet. Okay, so Brahma, he's the source of the Vedas. Of course, he hears the Vedas through the flute of Krishna, and so the Vedas are all poetry. Every verse is poetry. Every verse has a meter. and not just 1 meter. There's some associate of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya used to just, maybe it was, forget who, but Vasu Ghosh maybe, and some of Lord Chaitanya's associates would chant each verse of Bhagavatam in several different meters, different poetic songs, and Lord Chaitanya would just transcendently enjoy. So Brahma, he's the original poet. So the Bhagavad Gita, every verse is poetry. It is described spiritual world by Kunta, Goloka, Vrindavan, where every word is a song, every gate of it is a dance. The soil is the purpose gem. Every tree is a transcendental purpose tree. All the supreme spiritual entities are always enjoyable and tasty, and where there is eternal presence, there's eternal presence of transcendental time, which is ever present and free from past and future, and thus is not subject to the quality of passing away, even for the space of half a moment. And it's described there. Brahma, the original poet, he sings, I worship that transcendental seat known as Svetadvip, where the Lakshmis, in their unalloyed spiritual essence, practice the amorous loving service of the Supreme Lord Krishna as their only lover, where the flute is the favorite attendant, and on, just poetry after poetry. So I'll read the verse again. O my son, the original poet Brahma, after mature meditation for 1,000 celestial years, could know only that the glories of the Supreme Soul are inconceivable. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. There are some froggish philosophers who want to know the Supreme Soul by means of philosophy and mental speculation. And when the devotees who are to some extent in knowledge of the Supreme Lord admit that the glories of the Lord are inestimable or inconceivable, the froggish philosophers adversely criticize them. These philosophers, like the frog in the well, who try to estimate the measurement of the Pacific Ocean, like to take trouble over fruitless mental speculation instead of taking instructions from devotees like the original poet, namely Brahma. Lord Brahma underwent a severe type of meditation for 1,000 celestial years, yet he said that the glories of the Lord are inconceivable. Therefore, what can the froggish philosophers hope to gain from their mental speculations? It is said in the Brahma Samhita that the mental speculator may fly through the sky of speculation with the velocity of the mind or the wind for thousands of millions of years, and still he will find it inconceivable. The devotees, however, do not waste time in such vain searching after knowledge of the Supreme, but they submissively hear the glories of the Lord from bona fide devotees. They submissively hear the glories of the Lord from bona fide devotees. Thus they transcendently enjoy the process of hearing and chanting. The Lord approves of the devotional activities of the devotees or Mahatmas, and he says, so these are 2 verses from Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 13 and 14, 2 verses that Prabhupada references quite a bit. Mahatmanas tumam partha devim prakritim ashrita bhajantyananya manaso gyatva bhutatim abhyayam sattatam kirtayanto mam yatantas chadrita vrataha namasyantas chamam bhaktya nityayukta upasate. The pure devotees of the Lord take shelter of the Paraprakriti, the internal potency of the Lord, called Lakshmi Devi, Sita Devi, Srimati Radharani, or Srimati Rukmini Devi, and thus they become actual Mahatmas or great souls. Mahatmas are not fond of indulging in mental speculations, but they actually take to the devotional service of the Lord without the slightest deviation. Devotional service is manifested by the primary process of hearing and chanting about the activities of the Lord. This transcendental method practiced by the Mahatmas gives them sufficient knowledge of the Lord, because if the Lord can at all be known to some extent, It is only through the means of devotional service and no other way. One may go on speculating and waste the valuable time of his human life, but that will not help anyone to enter into the precincts of the Lord. The Mahatmas, however, are not concerned with knowing the Lord by mental speculation, because they enjoy hearing about his glorious activities in his transcendental dealings with his devotees or with the demons. The devotees take pleasure in both and are happy in this life and the life after. Om Ganatmirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayamupakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganraknatam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tayubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3 Chapter 6 Text 38 Atmano Vasito Vatsa Mahima Kavinadina Sambatsara Sahasrante Diya Yoga Vipakaya. Okay, Hare Krishna. So, in this part of the Bhagavatam, yeah, I'm looking ahead 2 chapters. It's called Manifestation of Brahma from Vishnu. So, well, there's different pastimes about Brahma. So Brahma didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to do. So he did tapa. He heard the instruction tapa. Tapa means heat. It means austerity. When we do some austerity, whether it's austerity about eating or sleeping, or the austerity of I'm going to chant Hare Krishna japa rounds now, or any sort of austerity, there's potency, there's heat, just like fire can cook things, it moves things. So there's heat. And it's got even the demon Hiranyakashipu did great austerities, and he was like, from him emitted a fire that was like, scorching the universe. And then Brahma got in that meditation, and Brahma, he's like a star character in the Bhagavatam. And so we hear about Brahma basically in like 2 capacities. Sometimes we hear about him as like the head of our sampradaya, the original spiritual master. So that's there. And then sometimes we hear about him as a demigod. It's a different capacity. That's where like Brahma Vimohan Lila, he gets bewildered by Krishna and that sort of thing. So Brahma, he's like, he wanted to do service, and he wasn't clear, so he went deep into meditation, heard the sound, he got the instruction tapa, so we can take that lesson. And so he got clear eventually on how to do a service of manipulating, engineering the material elements to create the material universe, ultimately for the good of the living entities. We can think of the material universe as Durga, as a prison house. That's good. Ultimately, though, a prison house, the prison is not just meant for like sadistic punishment. It's meant for the citizens who choose criminal behavior to get rectified, so that for their own happiness, and then they become contributing members of the society. So that's the idea of Brahma and Shiva and Durga and Kali, that these are very powerful personalities. who manipulate material elements to give us the houses of this body and the houses of the houses we're living in, and the cars and all the earth, water, fire, ether, all the material elements. Ultimately, it's mercy. It's actually love. It's for our rehabilitation. And sometimes in the suffering, it can be hard to remember that, but that's the actual purpose. And so, all right. So Brahma realized, and so this is Brahma, and so he's like, we can't imagine what a super genius Brahma is, right? And then Brahma, after mature meditation for 1,000 celestial years, um, he could only know that the glories of the Supreme Soul are inconceivable. And then Prabhupada talks about the froggish philosophers, referencing the metaphor of the frog in the well. You're probably all familiar with that. Prabhupada goes there a lot. So it's a very key point. So Prabhupada sometimes quotes Srila Jiva Goswami. Srila Jiva Goswami says that the first qualification to begin to understand God is to accept that God is inconceivable. The first qualification to begin to understand God is to accept that God is inconceivable. So when we can make a distinction there, inconceivable doesn't mean can't be understood. No, we can understand. We can understand something. Was it the first verse of 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita? Krishna says, Maya Sakta Manaparta Yoga Mujan Manashriya Samshayam Samagramam Yatagasasita Shrinu. Now here, Arjuna, how by practicing yoga with mind attached to me, with detachment, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Now it's not like any living entity can know Krishna in full, but a jiva can have some realization. And this inconceivable, Jiva Goswami is saying that's the first step to accept. In the Western philosophy, there's Immanuel Kant. He has a well-known book called Critique of Pure Reason. So it's the same idea, I believe, that the idea is, okay, reason, what we can conceive with this mind and intellect, which is very puny, and even Brahma's mind and intellect, it's very, very limited. It's very limited. So to accept that, to accept that, and then just such a key principle in this verse and throughout Prabhupada's teachings, right? So then we can accept a different epistemology, a different way to know, and that's called bhakti. That's called bhakti, serving with love and devotion, just like the way we like to explain it sometimes. Just like if we want to get to know a person, say like a fellow human being who's equal. So through my analytical process, I can maybe know something about you, something, but very limited, very limited. So if I really want to get to know you intimately, the way is that I gain your love and trust, and I serve you, and I gain your love and trust, and I endeavor to really understand with empathy and like that. Then you choose to reveal yourself to me more and more. You choose to reveal yourself, your heart, and so that's the process to get to know a conscious entity. If we're talking about unconscious entities, inanimate entities like a rock, then what's called the methods of logical positivism and empiricism, just kind of control them, study them, expose them to chemicals. We can study, like that. Okay, so those methods are somewhat effective to those material empiricism, somewhat effective to study, where the object is inferior in consciousness to the scientist. But to get an evolved conscious entity, that's gaining love and trust. So if we set out to try to study the absolute using only methods that are effective for trying to understand inanimate objects, we're essentially saying I am God. I am the supreme entity. Nothing can possibly be equal to great or greater than me. Now, we might not directly say that, but that's the because a priori, just by choosing that method of study, it's a method of study that's effective for objects, just like we say, objective science. It's fairly effective to study objects, but not subjects with consciousness. So then I'm saying that, oh, the absolute God, the source of everything, must be more like an inanimate rock than a conscious human being. Right. So, which means that I'm using a method to study that implies that the studier, the researcher, is superior to the object of study. So it means I'm superior to the absolute. That makes me mega absolute. They would just get what's the consciousness behind the choice of epistemology. So it could be argued. It makes more sense if I'm going to study the absolute, like the source of the sun and the moon and like that, to use a method that's more conducive to getting to know conscious entities. So when we apply that method to the source of all creation, the technical term for that is bhakti. That's what bhakti is from a scientific analysis. And so, and then God, the Supreme Krishna, reveals himself to us to the extent that we're sincere in our service. And of course, our service is, Krishna recommends, do that service through a pure devotee, like someone in the line of Brahma, Srila Prabhupada, Adviti Pranipatena, Prashnena, Sevaya, Upadekshanti Teginam Geninas Tatvidarshina. So the word diksha, they're all familiar with the word diksha. Prabhupada emphasizes the essence. Diksha means initiation. The essence of the process of initiation is as the spiritual master. Prabhupada says the essence of the process of diksha is divya gyan, which means transformational, transcendental knowledge. And so the spiritual master, Chakudan Dilo Ye Janme Janme, Prabhu say, divya gyan vide prokashito. So we say to Prabhupada, you fill our heart with transcendental knowledge, you open our eyes with transcendental knowledge, divya gyan. So that's what, there's many places Prabhupada equates synonymous divya gyan and diksha. And so that's the essence of the process. And of course, that process is in no way dependent on physical presence in the same room or even the same planet. And then we endeavor to qualify ourselves to receive that divya gyan through humbly rendering service. Tadviti Pradipatena Paripashana Sevaya service. And asking questions, not in a challenging spirit, in a humble service spirit, trusting spirit. Okay. And so Srila Prabhupada talks about his own history, that when he first met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, I think everyone here is familiar with the story, 1922, his friend Narendranath Maulik, Prabhupada, he dragged him there. Prabhupada had some skepticism about these so-called sadhus, but Prabhupada saw quickly, oh, this is the real thing. This is the genuine article, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And then Bhaktisiddhanta gave Prabhupada his life mission before Prabhupada even got up from offering obeisances, spread Lord Chaitanya's message in English. Prabhupada argued with him. Later, Prabhupada would say, I was happily defeated. So Prabhupada would say that 1922, that was the real initiation. Well, what's that? Prabhupada said, when I accepted Bhaktisiddhanta's mission as my life and soul, which was right there at that first meeting, he said that was the initiation. Then his heart and soul completely open to receive transformational realization, divya gyan, diksha from Bhaktisiddhanta. Prabhupada said then 11 years later, 1933, I got the formal initiation. Now the formal initiation That's also transcendental when done properly according to the Parampara. But Prabhupada said the essence, essential initiation was when I accepted Bhaktisiddhanta's mission. And a principle we've often talked about, initiation is, it's not essentially an event, it's a process. It's a process. And then like the formal initiation ceremony can be, doesn't have to be, but can be a natural transcendental part of the process. We've given the analogy, like if we put milk on the stove, and we go, the milk's boiling, which means it's in the process of boiling. Now, it might not be at that royal with the bubbles, but it's boiling. It's true. Now, a few minutes later, maybe it is in the process of boiling, of bubbles and like that. The milk's boiling. And even a few minutes later, when it's like, it's even more ferocious, the milk's boiling. So like the more we're immersed here. And so then there's so many key points in this text here. Bhagavatam is just like Brahma, after all his meditation, he just got, Krishna is inconceivable. Krishna is inconceivable. And that it's every verse of the Bhagavatam is inconceivable. How much realization we have about that is another question. Prabhupada talks about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta at one point he was in East Bengal, which I guess is Bangladesh now. It wasn't Bangladesh then, but East Bengal was Bangladesh. It became Bangladesh. And I think he was in Darkor or something. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, is that the name of the city in East Bengal? Darkor, okay. Dhaka, yeah. And Bhaktisiddhanta, he gave a lecture. He spoke on the first verse, 111, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Janmadyasa Yaton Vayadi Tortash, Tini Bradavida Yadi Kaviye, again Brahma, the Kavi, Brahma is the original poet. Tejavari Midam Yatavini Bayo. He spoke on the first verse of Bhagavatam every day for 3 months. And of course, his whole view of that is, we're just getting started, So that was just one verse, and there's 18,000 verses. So Srila Prabhupada, he writes about hearing, just like Brahma hearing from Krishna. And so Prabhupada's talk about the devotees. The devotees, however, do not waste time in such vain searching after knowledge of the Supreme, but they submissively hear the glories of the Lord from bona fide devotees. Thus they transcendently enjoy the process of hearing and chanting. And the pure devotees of the Lord take shelter of the para-prakriti, the internal potency of the Lord. Then Prabhupada lists different female personalities. Lakshmi Devi, Sita Devi, Srimati Radharani, or Srimati Rukmini Devi, and thus they become actual Mahatmas or great souls. So they become an actual great soul. We're taking shelter. Mahatmanas tumam porta devim prakriti mashrita. We're taking shelter of the internal energy. The internal energy, that's Srimati Radharani. That's Sita Devi, okay, the internal energy. The external energy, that's also a female personality. Durga or Kali, warden of the prison house. Okay. And have so whether it's material energy or spiritual internal energy, at the beginning of class we quoted about the Lakshmis, right? In Brahma Samhita, Brahma talks about I worship that transcendental seat known as Svetadvip, where in their unalloyed spiritual essence, the Lakshmis practice the amorous service of the Supreme Lord Krishna as their only lover, where every tree is a transcendental purpose tree, where the soil is the purpose gem, where every gate is a dance and every word is a song, where the flute's the favorite attendant, and where effulgence is full of spiritual nectar, and there are numberless milk cows always emit transcendental oceans of milk, and where there's ever where eternal time is ever present, free free from past and future and like that. So this is internal energy. This is internal energy. So external energy is when we're in that illusion. We're alienated from ourself. We're trying to figure out things on our own without reference to hearing from these great, fully realized personalities. An example often used. Let's say if there's an ant on the wall. I mean, an ant is something we can see. Say that, but there's a microbe on the wall. But let's just say there's an ant on the wall here, or where you are, somewhere in Florida or Europe. So let's say, imagine there's an ant on the wall. So the ant has some mind and intellect and sensory experience. And right. So what consciousness, what awareness does the ant have that it's really just walking on one small section of one wall in an entire room that has several walls? What awareness does the ant have that even this one room is just one room in a house with several rooms, each room with several walls? What awareness does the ant have that but even this one house is just one house in a pretty small town called Alachua, or a continent called Europe or North America. But even this continent, it's really just a pebble floating in the oceans called the Pacific and the Atlantic. But even all the oceans and continents, that's just a pebble called Earth, and that up to the cosmos and like that. So what awareness does the ant have? So we say, oh, that's the ant, because the ant doesn't have much intelligence at all compared to me. But that's the whole thing. So Brahma is getting that he's like that ant. Like, no, I mean, I just on my own, I don't have a clue what's going on. So let me simply hear submissively and engage in devotional service. Then Krishna joyfully reveals whatever Krishna chooses to reveal. Saivaya maya teda yogo bhakta Pratana, Yoga Pokta Pratana, Bhaktosine Sakate Rasyane Tarutamam. Krishna says to Arjuna in many places, he says, I'm revealing this transcendental mystery to you, which remains a mystery as long as you stay absorbed in the external energy, the Maya Devi. I'm revealing this to you because you're my devotee and you're my friend. Idam tute guyatamam pravakshamyana suyave saitam ganam viganam sahitam yajgat famoksha subat. Krishna says to Arjuna, the beginning of the 9th chapter, he says, anasuyave, he says, because you're not envious of me, you're not envious of other living entities, therefore you're able to understand this transcendental mystery because you're my devotee. So that's the key. And so we might, so we have these different, just like, let's imagine, it's sort of a metaphor, but it's sort of the way to, just like, so that there's, so let's say there's a king, that's like Krishna, and Krishna has like, the king has the queen, right? Now there could be so many maid servants who are also servants of the king. They're serving the king. Now the maid servants represent these other processes, jnana yoga, or karma yoga, or raja yoga, or hatha yoga, that represent all these different processes. And whereas the queen represents bhakti. So that's, of course, the ultimate practitioner, the ultimate bhakti yogi is Srimati Radharani, and her internal energy expanses. Ananda Chinmaya Sapratibhavidabis Tabirya Evani Jurupataya Kalabi Galoka Evani Visatya Kilatma Bhuto Govinda Mahari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Srimati Rukmini Devi, Srimati Sita Devi, Lakshmi Devi, etc. So the maidservants, these other processes, they're all meant to serve the queen. They're all meant to serve bhakti. Right? So all those other processes, and they're there in Bhagavad Gita, they're there in Bhagavatam, but they all lead to pure devotional service to Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They all lead to that. And if we look at the metaphor, so the maidservants, they're serving the king, but they don't really know much about the king. Okay, even if we get to know them, they don't know much of them. They don't know much. But the queen, she knows the queen. She knows the king intimately. Even we know the queen can control the king. Oftentimes it might look like the king's controlling, but really the queen's controlling things because she has such an intimate, the king has such love like that, right? So the queen, again, that's bhakti, represented by the internal energy. Mahatmanastu Mamparta, Devim Prakriti. Devim Prakriti means the internal energy. And the external energy is also divine from Krishna's point of view, but not from our point of view. Devi Yesha Gunamai, Mamamai Dhira, Mame Vaya Prabhatite, Mayametam Taratite. Krishna says this external energy, it's like it's impossible to overcome. But if you take shelter of me, then you can easily cross beyond the ocean of material existence, like that. Okay. So to take shelter in bhakti, and then knowledge is revealed, and so the way to take shelter that's given here. And it's Satatam Kirtiatu Mam Yatantas Chatu Davrata Namasyantas Chamam Bhakti Nityukto Pasate. Okay. So what's the way to take shelter? Kirtan, Sataram. So just this kirtan. Oh yeah, kirtan. Because a lot of people now, which is a good thing, heard of kirtan. Of course, there's all sorts of things going on in the name of kirtan. That's not actual kirtan. Kirtan actually means kirtan for Krishna or Vishnu, like that. But but still, just like compared to, let's say, 60 years ago, before Prabhupada came to the West, who outside of India heard of kirtan? Like very few. Like even in India, I don't know. But of course, Lord Chaitanya made kirtan popular. So, but outside of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, it wasn't that well known, as far as I'm aware. And so, but now because of Prabhupada, people know these words, kirtan and mantra and like that. Okay, it's so Krishna says, this is the way to take these verses from Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada quotes Krishna saying, here's how to take shelter in the internal energy. Satatam kirtan. How often? Satatam. Always. Only 24 hours per day. Actually, in that verse, Krishna says always a lot. Satatam, that means always. Yatantas dridavrata. Dridavrata, which means, we can imagine the English word determination comes from the Sanskrit drita, with the determined vow. It's like I said, well, when I feel like it, I chant. That's good. That's good. But Krishna and Prabhupada are saying, if you really want to make progress out of the material ocean and to your eternal bliss in serving Krishna in Goloka, if you really want to make progress, do it with a vow, not just like when I feel like it. Namasyantas chamam bhaktya nitya. Nitya again means always, eternally. So that's it. So in bhakti, Prabhupada often emphasizes the journey is the goal, the process is the goal. What we're doing now is we're discussing the pastimes of Krishna's pure devotees in Srimad Bhagavatam. And we're chanting Hare Krishna, and we had our morning program chanting Hare Krishna, discussing Bhagavatam. And then when we become pure devotees, then we'll chant Hare Krishna and discuss Bhagavatam. Same activity. Other processes aren't like that. Other process, I'm doing the process to get to the goal. And then, but in bhakti, we just develop more and more of a taste for this hearing and chanting and archana. and deity worship Haribo, and deity's doing the Haribo, like that, right? And so as the jaundice gets cured, and we get more and more of a taste for the sweetness, the sweet nectar of chanting. That's why I think I shared this maybe last week when I gave class. Was it? Yeah. One time, yeah, they were having a talk with Prabhupada, like a walk, and devotees had sort of like a have-to mentality. Oh, it's 16 rounds, we have to chant a round. And Prabhupada was like, why not 16,000 rounds? Okay, why not 16,000? Meaning that, well, the idea of, yeah, we have to commit, have to in a positive sense. Like if we want to make advancement, we commit to the discipline, a minimum number of rounds per day. And the commitment is because we don't have a taste. And I don't know the details, but probably the cowherd boys in Vrindavan, they're not needing to make a commitment to a certain number of rounds because they're just like inconceivably enthusiastic to remember Krishna and chant Krishna. They're creating, Mother Yashoda is creating songs about Krishna at every moment. They're so absorbed, they don't need a commitment. But Prabhupada's point is, yeah, so you need to fulfill your commitment if you want to advance. And then when you have a taste, then it's like, oh, I wish I could chant 16,000 rounds per day, like that. So the chanting Hare Krishna morning program, this regulation, that is in different forms: chanting japa, kirtan, bhagavatam, personal reading, nasta prayesh, bhadreshu, nityam bhagavata sevya, bhagavat ritamashloke, bhakti bhavati naistiki, by regular attendance at classes on the Srimad Bhagavatam, and by serving the pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada, all that is anartha, all that is dirty in the heart is practically completely destroyed in loving transcendental consciousness service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is praised by the transcendental song, the choicest Vedic verses, is established in the heart irrevocably. And then tada rajastamo bhava kamalabhadeste then we become free from the prison of the lower modes and the lust and the anger and the greed and the envy and the jealousy. What a relief. And then the devotee is happy in pure sattva, like that. So it means like regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam. That's how Prabhupada's chanting that verse. So the idea of this morning program, for some of you it's afternoon, I understand, but the idea is to be regular. I'm sometimes wishing that I was doing Prabhupada's full morning program every day, and with Prabhus like you. That's the real program. That's temple life. So whether it's an official temple or we turn our homes into a temple, somehow or other, to be regular in this hearing and chanting, and then that Cheto Darpana Marjanam, that cleanses the dust from the mirror of the heart, and we get Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam, and we feel more and more the victory of Sankirtan, like that. All right, so coming to closure here. Just some really interesting phrasing from Prabhupada I noticed as I was reading the purport. Okay. The Mahatmas, however, are not concerned with knowing the Lord by mental speculation, because they enjoy hearing about his glorious activities in his transcendental dealings with his devotees or with the demons. The devotees take pleasure in both and are happy in this life and the life after. I believe Prabhupada's referring there. There are some maybe like Sahajiya type of sort of devotees, sort of pseudo devotees, and say, oh, we're only interested in Krishna dancing with the gopis. But Prabhupada's like, no, we're interested in Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. We're interested in Krishna with Dhenukasura and all of Krishna's pastimes. They're all transcendental. So, and then the sentence before that, a very nice phrase here. One may go on speculating and waste the valuable time of his human life, but that will not help anyone to enter into the precincts of the Lord. The precincts of the Lord. Yeah, okay. Yeah. We can, well, that's the internal energy again. The more we take shelter in Bhagavatam, transcendental sound vibration, that's Srimati Radharani, the internal energy, the queen, like that. Then it's like personal entry into the palace. Now there could be like, a place that's far, far away from the palace. It's still the kingdom. Everything's the kingdom of the king. Everything's Krishna's. Again, we can get that analogy again, like the prison house. The prison house is also within the kingdom of the king, but there's not intimate relation with the king and the queen there, right? Then we're associated with other prisoners and a few guards. Okay, so kind of the process of entanglement and the process of freeing ourselves is all given here very sublimely. I'll read the verse again, text 38. Atmano vasito vatsa mahima kavinadina sambatsara sahasrante diya yoga vipakaya. O my son, the original poet, Brahma, after mature meditation for 1,000 celestial years, could know only that the glories of the Supreme Soul are inconceivable. Hare Krishna, Bhaktin Daniel.
Hi, Krishna. Thank you so much for your class today. Very enlivening for me. I have a question. I have a lot of questions, but I'll ask one question. My question today is, so we talked about the queen and the maidservants. And so in the house of service, there's so many different kinds of service. And I remember in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, like, just love me and remember me and serve me with love and devotion, and you'll attain me without doubt. He says this. And so I'm thinking that's like the position of the queen service, like we're doing bhakti and remembering and loving and serving. And then he gives so many other processes. He's like, okay, if you can't do that, then just do work and like offer it, to me. And so that's like karma yoga, and that's maybe like a maid servant. And there's all these other ways. And so my question is, okay, let's say we've elevated out of, karma yoga, and we're endeavoring to do bhakti yoga. And so I'm wondering, within the house of bhakti, is all service, loving devotional service, or attempts at loving devotional service, the same? Like if we're cooking prasadam, if we're distributing books, if we're chanting japa, if we're going on harinam, if we're, dressing the deities, if we're, being an accountant, whatever our dharmic potency, like, whatever we're doing, is it all the same to Krishna? Does he love all of it the same? Is it really more about our mood, or is it about the activity? Because what does it look like to be engaged in 24 hours of service? Certainly there's going to be lots of things in there that are like, taking baths and brushing teeth. And are we offering all of those things? And does Krishna love all of them? And there's differences of like economic status and like, child service versus not child service. So like, that's my question. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thanks very much. Yeah, you you accurately answered your own question. The short answer is yes, it's all the same. Whatever type of service we're engaged in, Krishna does not need any of our service. Krishna doesn't need any of our service, and he's looking at how much love do we have, how much sincerity, how much love do we have, whether we're leading a kirtan or we're reading or we're changing a diaper, like that. And like how much love and devotion for Radha Krishna are we bringing? Krishna's looking at our consciousness. So that's the essential answer. Now, sure, so that's the essential answer. So someone can be doing really big service that's maybe getting a lot of attention, and maybe they're becoming a famous devotee, but if their heart is like attached to Pratishta, enjoying the adoration and the fame, Krishna's like, and someone else can be doing a very simple service, maybe playing with their child, and just like, Srimati Rani, please inspire my child to become your servant. So Krishna is just sold out to that devotee, and like, oh, but no one's getting famous for playing with their child in that sort of service. And so Krishna is looking at the heart. Now you mentioned, it's interesting, some of the examples you mentioned. There's many places, many letters where Prabhupada, he'll write individual letters. He says, book distribution is the most important service. And there's other letters where he says, he's writing like to the school teachers, teaching the children, that's the most important service. There's one letter where Prabhupada says, accounting is the most important service. Okay, depending on who. So like he's talking, he wrote to a treasurer of a temple, and he wants the treasurer to get, like, this is, every penny is Krishna's, and so we want to account for it. So he wants that student to get, like, accounting is the most important service, and with others, distributing the books is the most important service. So yeah. So that's according to time and circumstance. And so, now at the same time, there's things like, there's the 9 processes of service, and there's different types of service. Now, Shravanam Kirtanam, that's foundation. That's foundation. And we develop purity by like being rigorous in the Shravanam Kirtanam. And the other services, even like if we're doing Archanam, we're doing worship or like that, that's kind of, it's always accompanied by Shravanam Kirtanam. So Shravanam Kirtanam is kind of foundational. So I appreciate very much your question. Hare Krishna. Other questions or comments? Hey, if not, we'll bring a close. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you.